At 2:10 p.m. on December 5, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale. This was Flight 19. It was a routine navigation training exercise, a navigation problem known as Navigation Problem Number 1. The mission was to fly east for 123 miles, north for 73 miles, and then back to base. The weather was described as favorable, typical for a Florida afternoon. The pilots were experienced, led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a combat veteran with over 2,500 flying hours. By 4 p.m., the routine had dissolved into a nightmare. The control tower at Fort Lauderdale began picking up fragmented transmissions between the pilots. They weren't speaking to the base, they were speaking to each other. The confusion in their voices was palpable. "Everything looks strange," Taylor's voice crackled through the static. "Even the ocean. We are entering whitewater. Nothing seems right." When the base finally managed to establish contact and asked for his position, Taylor's reply was chilling. "We don't know where we are. We must be about 225 miles northeast of base. We appear to be lost." The instructors on the ground were baffled. If Taylor was 225 miles northeast, he would be over the open Atlantic. But Taylor insisted his compasses had failed, both of them. He believed they were over the Florida Keys, despite having flown in the opposite direction. As the sun began to set, the transmissions grew faint, drowned out by atmospheric interference. The last words heard from Flight 19 were a command to drop into the sea when the first plane ran out of fuel. The response from the Navy was immediate. A Martin Mariner PBM-5 patrol plane, essentially a flying gas tank designed for long-range rescue, was dispatched with a crew of 13. It took off at 7:27 p.m. Within 20 minutes, the Mariner also vanished. A ship in the area reported seeing a burst of fire in the sky, but no wreckage was ever recovered. No oil slicks were detected. No life jackets bobbed on the surface. In a single afternoon, 6 aircraft and 27 men had vanished into a clear blue sky and a calm sea. This was the birth of a legend. This was not the first time the Atlantic had swallowed its travelers without explanation, but it was the moment the world began to realize that a specific patch of the ocean seemed to operate by a different set of rules. We call it the Bermuda Triangle. A graveyard of the unexplained, where the data remains, the ships continue to disappear, and the questions remain stubbornly unanswered. To analyze the mystery, we must first strip away the folklore and look at the physical reality of the region. The Bermuda Triangle is a conceptual space, roughly defined by vertices at Miami, Bermuda, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. It covers approximately 500,000 square miles, an area larger than the states of Texas and Oklahoma combined. It is not an officially recognized geographic territory. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names does not include it on any map. Yet, for mariners and pilots, the boundaries are very real. This region is one of the most heavily traveled shipping lanes in the world. It serves as a primary artery for trade between the Americas, Europe, and the Caribbean. On any given day, hundreds of massive cargo ships, oil tankers, and luxury cruise liners cross its invisible lines. Above them, the sky is crisscrossed by commercial flight paths connecting the northern and southern hemispheres. The environment within these coordinates is uniquely volatile. The most significant feature is the Gulf Stream. This is not merely an ocean current, it is a river within the sea, moving at speeds of up to 5 miles per hour. It carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico out into the North Atlantic. It is powerful enough to carry a disabled vessel hundreds of miles off course in a single night. A ship that sinks in the Gulf Stream does not settle directly below its last known position. Its remains are scattered across a shifting underwater landscape. Beneath the waves, the topography is some of the most extreme on the planet. The triangle sits atop the continental shelf, which drops off precipitously into the Puerto Rico Trench. Here, The ocean floor plunges to depths of over 27,000 feet. At these depths, the pressure is immense, and the darkness is absolute. Recovery of wreckage is not just difficult. With current technology, it is often physically impossible. Historically, the reports of strange occurrences in this region date back to the very first European contact. On October 11, 1492, Christopher Columbus sat on the deck of the Santa Maria. In his journal, he recorded seeing a remarkable beam of light fall from the sky into the ocean. Days later, he noted that his compasses were behaving erratically. They no longer pointed to the stars as they should. Columbus was a master navigator. For him to record compass failure suggests a phenomenon that was both visible and measurable. Modern historians often dismiss this as a meteor or a simple misunderstanding of magnetic variation. But it established a precedent. Since then, the list of verified, unexplained disappearances has grown with disturbing consistency. In March 1918, the USS Cyclops set sail from Brazil toward Baltimore. It was a 542-foot-long Navy collier, carrying 10,000 tons of manganese ore and 306 souls. It was equipped with a radio. The weather was fair. The ship never arrived. No distress signal was sent. No debris was found. The Cyclops remains the largest loss of life in US naval history, not directly involving combat. What makes the Cyclops' disappearance even more unsettling is its legacy. In 1941, two of the Cyclops' sister ships, the USS Proteus and the USS Nereus, also vanished in the same region. All three ships belonged to the same class. All three vanished without a trace. In 1948, the British South American Airways aircraft Star Tiger vanished while flying from the Azores to Bermuda. The pilot's last radio contact indicated they were on course and expected to arrive on time. They were never heard from again. A year later, another Tudor foreplane, the Star Ariel, disappeared on a flight between Bermuda and Jamaica. The investigators into the Star Tiger disappearance reached a conclusion that has become the hallmark of the triangle. It may be said that what happened in this case will never be known, and the fate of Star Tiger must remain an unsolved mystery. When we examine the logs of those who have navigated the triangle and survived, we find reports of anomalies that fall outside the standard definitions of maritime hazards. These are not simple engine stalls or navigator errors. They are descriptions of a fundamental breakdown in the environment itself. The phenomenon of electronic fog. Perhaps the most famous account of an environmental anomaly comes from Bruce Gernon. In December 1970, Gernon was flying his Beechcraft Bonanza from Andros Island in the Bahamas toward Palm Beach. Gernon reported encountering a strange elliptical cloud at low altitude. As he entered the cloud, he described it not as vapor, but as a brilliant white fog that seemed to glow. He claimed the fog became a tunnel, and as he flew through it, his instruments began to malfunction. The compass spun uncontrollably. The electronic navigation systems went dark. When he emerged from the tunnel, he found himself over Miami Beach. The anomaly was the time. The flight had taken 47 minutes. Under normal conditions, and given the speed of his aircraft, the journey should have taken at least 75 minutes. Gernon claimed he had traveled 100 miles in roughly 3 minutes. While there is no radar data to confirm a time slip, the records from Miami Air Traffic Control show that Gernon's plane was missing from their screens for the duration of his time in the cloud. He appeared on radar only when he was already over Miami, far ahead of his flight plan. Magnetic declination and the agonic line. The issue of compass failure is a recurring theme in triangle lore. The Earth's magnetic field is not uniform. True north, the geographic North Pole, and magnetic north, where a compass points, are usually several degrees apart. This difference is known as magnetic declination. Navigators must constantly adjust their charts to account for this gap. However, there is a line where true north and magnetic north align perfectly. This is called the agonic line. Historically, this line passed directly through the Bermuda Triangle. For an inexperienced pilot or sailor, the sudden alignment could be catastrophic. If they were used to compensating for a 15-degree difference and that difference suddenly vanished, they would find themselves steering 15 degrees off course. Over a few hundred miles, that error would lead them into the empty, fuel-draining expanse of the open Atlantic. But there is a contradiction in this explanation. The agonic line is not stationary. It moves westward at a rate of several miles per year. By the late 20th century, the agonic line had moved out of the triangle and toward the Gulf of Mexico. Despite this, pilots in the 1980s, 90s, and today continue to report the same spinning compasses and magnetic pull that were reported in the 1940s. The white water and luminous seas. In many of the final transmissions from lost vessels, there is a mention of white water. This was Taylor's last coherent description before Flight 19 vanished. This is not a standard nautical term for rough seas. It describes a phenomenon where the ocean's surface appears to become milky, opaque, and luminous. Some sailors have described it as sailing through a bowl of milk. Satellites have occasionally captured images of large patches of bioluminescent plankton in the region, but these do not account for the navigational interference that usually accompanies the white water reports. There is a sense, expressed by survivors, that the water itself changes its physical properties, becoming less buoyant or reflecting light in a way that obscures the horizon and sky. The absence of evidence. The most unsettling anomaly of all is the silence. In the modern era, ships and planes are equipped with emergency position indicating radio beacons, EPIRBs, and black boxes. These devices are designed to activate automatically upon contact with water or sudden impact. They transmit a signal that can be picked up by satellites. In the case of the SS El Faro, which sank during a hurricane in 2015, the black box was recovered from the bottom of the ocean. The tragedy was understood. But in dozens of other cases within the Triangle, most notably the Marine Sulphur Queen in 1963, no such signals were ever received. The ship, a 524-foot tanker, vanished with 39 crew members. Not a single life ring, oil slick, or emergency signal was ever detected. The transition from functioning vessel to non-existent appears, in these waters, to be instantaneous. Because the facts are incomplete and the anomalies are persistent, the Bermuda Triangle has become a magnet for theories that range from the geological to the fringe. The methane hydrate theory. One of the more scientifically plausible theories involves the sea floor. Geologists have discovered vast deposits of methane gas trapped in a crystalline lattice of ice known as methane hydrates beneath the sediment of the triangle. If the sea floor is disturbed, perhaps by a minor tremor or an underwater landslide, the pressure holding this gas can be released. The methane erupts to the surface as a massive field of bubbles. This would have two catastrophic effects. First, it would drastically reduce the density of the water. A ship floating on the surface would suddenly lose its buoyancy. It would not capsize, it would simply fall through the water, sinking to the bottom in seconds. Second, if the gas cloud rises into the air, it could be sucked into an aircraft's engines. Methane displaces oxygen, the engines would stall, and the plane would fall from the sky. While laboratory models prove this is possible, there has never been a confirmed methane eruption in the Triangle during a time that coincides with a disappearance. It remains a theory of what could happen rather than what did happen. Hexagonal clouds and air bombs. Meteorologists using satellite imagery have identified unusual hexagonal clouds forming over the western edge of the Triangle near the Bahamas. These clouds, ranging from 20 to 50 miles across, appear to create air bombs. These are intense microbursts, downdrafts of cold air that strike the ocean at speeds of up to 170 miles per hour. These blasts can create localized rogue waves over 45 feet high. To an unsuspecting pilot or sailor, it would be like being hit by a hammer from the sky. However, critics point out that hexagonal clouds are found in many parts of the world, including the North Sea, where such disappearances are not a regular occurrence. The USOs, unidentified submerged objects. For those who find the geological explanations lacking, there is the theory of USOs. Military sonar operators and commercial pilots have occasionally reported objects moving underwater at speeds that defy current naval technology, sometimes exceeding 100 knots. Unlike UFOs in the sky, these objects appear to inhabit the deep trenches of the triangle. Some theorists suggest that the triangle is a hub of activity for non-human intelligence, using the deep Puerto Rico Trench as a base of operations. They believe the electronic fog and magnetic interference are side effects of the propulsion systems used by these objects. While there is no declassified evidence to support this, the Navy UAP reports of recent years have brought this theory back into the mainstream conversation. The Atlantis and ancient technology theory. The legend of the lost city of Atlantis has been linked to the triangle for decades. In 1968, a series of rectangular limestone blocks was discovered underwater off the coast of North Bimini. Known as the Bimini Road, many believe it to be the remnants of an ancient harbor or temple. The theory, popularized by the psychic Edgar Cayce, suggests that Atlantis used powerful fire crystals for energy. Cayce predicted that the ruins of Atlantis would be found in the Bahamas and that the ancient technology, specifically these crystals, might still be active on the sea floor, periodically emitting pulses of energy that disrupt modern navigation. Geologists maintain the Bimini Road is a natural formation of beach rock that has fractured into rectangular shapes over millennia. Yet, for many, the alignment of the site with ancient legends is too precise to ignore. The Kubrick connection and the Cold War narrative. A more cynical theory suggests that the mystery of the triangle was a deliberate piece of disinformation. During the Cold War, the region was a hotbed of secret military testing, high-altitude balloons, underwater sonar arrays, and early missile tests. By encouraging the public to believe in a supernatural mystery, the government could mask classified operations. If a civilian ship wandered into a forbidden zone and was intercepted or accidentally destroyed, the mystery provided a convenient cover. Names like Stanley Kubrick are often invoked in this context, not because of personal involvement, but as symbols of an era where the government was perceived as capable of staging reality to maintain strategic secrecy. While the theories capture the imagination, the scientific community and official bodies like the US Navy offer explanations that are grounded in probability and environmental science. The primary explanation is a combination of environmental hostility and human error. The Bermuda Triangle is situated in a region where tropical storms and hurricanes are born. These are not always massive, slow-moving systems. Often they are white squalls, sudden, violent storms that appear without the darkening of the sky. A boat can be sailing in clear weather and be capsized by a 60-knot gust in less than a minute. The river in the ocean. We must return to the Gulf Stream. To an investigator, the Gulf Stream is the ultimate cleanup crew. If an aircraft crashes or a ship sinks, any debris that remains on the surface is swept northward at 5 miles per hour. By the time a search and rescue team arrives at the last known coordinates, the evidence has been carried 50 or 100 miles away. In the vast, churning Atlantic, finding a single life raft is like finding a needle in a haystack that is itself moving. The psychology of navigation. The case of Flight 19 is often cited as a classic example of human error. Lieutenant Taylor was a skilled pilot, but he was new to the Fort Lauderdale area. He had recently transferred from Miami. He became convinced that his compasses were broken and that the islands he was seeing were the Florida Keys. In reality, he was over the Bahamas. His students actually suggested they turn west to find the coast, but Taylor, as the flight leader, overruled them. He insisted on flying northeast, deeper into the Atlantic, believing he was heading toward land. The tragedy was not caused by a magnetic portal, but by spatial disorientation, a psychological state where a pilot's senses contradict their instruments, leading to a fatal loss of direction. The rogue wave factor. Oceanographers have confirmed that rogue waves are a reality. These are waves that reach heights of 100 feet or more, formed when different wave systems collide and reinforce one another. In the Bermuda Triangle, the fast-moving Gulf Stream often meets wind and wave systems coming from the opposite direction. This collision of water creates the perfect conditions for a rogue wave. A 100-foot wave would hit a ship with the force of several hundred tons of TNT. It would snap the hull of a ship like the USS Cyclops in seconds. There would be no time for a mayday. The ship would be driven straight to the bottom. The law of large numbers. Finally, we must consider the law of large numbers. Lloyd's of London, the world's most prominent maritime insurance market, has conducted extensive audits of the region. Their data shows that the number of ships lost in the Bermuda Triangle is not significantly higher, proportionally, than in any other high-traffic area of the ocean. If you have 10,000 ships passing through a region with volatile weather and deep trenches, you will have more accidents than in a region with 10 ships and calm water. From this perspective, the Bermuda Triangle is a constructed mystery. We have drawn a line around a busy area and labeled every tragedy within it as unexplained. It is a product of confirmation bias. We remember the ships that vanished in the Triangle, but we forget the thousands that vanish in the rest of the world's oceans. If the scientific explanations are so comprehensive, why does the doubt remain? Why do we still feel a sense of unease when we hear the name? The answer lies in the human need for narrative and the historical timing of the mystery's rise. The Bermuda Triangle became a cultural phenomenon in the 1960s and 70s. This was the era of the mystery industry. Authors like Charles Berlitz, who wrote the 1974 bestseller The Bermuda Triangle, tapped into a specific post-war anxiety. This was an era defined by the Cold War, the Kennedy assassination, and the growing realization that official stories were often incomplete. The public had learned to look for the hidden truth. The Triangle offered a mystery that was democratic. It wasn't a secret held by the CIA. It was a secret held by the Earth itself. It suggested that, despite our radar, our satellites, and our nuclear submarines, we were still at the mercy of the unknown. There is a psychological comfort in the idea of a dead zone. In a modern world where every square inch of the planet is mapped, surveyed, and exploited, the idea that there is a place where we cannot go, a place that can still beat us, restores a sense of scale to the human experience. It reminds us that we are small, and the ocean is very, very large. Furthermore, the missing information acts as a fuel for suspicion. Science can explain how a ship might sink. It can provide a list of probabilities, but it cannot provide the specific, minute-by-minute account of what happened to the Star Ariel. It cannot explain why a seasoned pilot like Charles Taylor would suddenly lose the ability to read the sun. Until we can recover the wreckage from the bottom of the Puerto Rico Trench, the official explanations will always be theories, just as much as the fringe ones are. We live in an age of data, but data is not the same as truth. The gaps in the records, the missing black boxes, the silent radios, the lack of debris create a void, and the human mind abhors a vacuum. We fill that void with whatever our imagination dictates. The official stance remains unchanged. The US Navy, the Coast Guard, and the maritime insurance industry all agree. There is no evidence that disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle are caused by anything other than physical, explainable forces. The ocean is deep. The weather is violent. Humans are fallible. But we are left with the anomalies that refuse to be quieted. We are left with the white water that glows in the dark. We are left with the time tunnel of Bruce Gernon. We are left with the fact that in 1945, 27 men vanished in a single afternoon, and the very plane sent to find them was swallowed as well. If it is all just math and probability, then the Atlantic is a remarkably efficient eraser of human history. Is the triangle a physical anomaly, a geological quirk of methane and air bombs, or is it merely a product of our own psychology, a map of our fears, a ghost story we tell ourselves to make the vast, indifferent ocean feel slightly more personal? Somewhere, 5 miles beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, the hulls of the Cyclops, the Proteus, and the Nereus are resting. They hold the answers. But the pressure at those depths is enough to crush a human being in a heartbeat. Until we find a way to reach them, we are only guessing. The ocean keeps its secrets. It has been doing so for millions of years, and the Bermuda Triangle remains exactly what it has always been, a map of what we do not know. So what really happened to Flight 19? What happened to the 300 souls on the Cyclops? The answer depends on what you choose to believe.